Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Owner stories again today, number 31 in the Owner Stories series. And today I have Stephen coming in. Stephen's owned a couple of Porsches. He's owned a couple of interesting cars from what he's told me briefly through email. So I'm running a little bit late. I've got 5 minutes to get Zoom set up. I'm going to set Zoom up. I'm going to connect with Stephen, and we're going to talk about his PorscheCooled owner story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. This is number 31 of the Owner Story series. And today I'm joined by Stephen, and Stephen's coming in from the UK, from London. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, Michael. I'm actually based in Jersey, in the Channel Islands.
Oh, you're in Jersey. Okay.
Yes. I come from London originally, but I've lived in Jersey for a long time.
Okay. Fantastic. So, Stephen, actually, you didn't reach out to me by Instagram, did you? You sent me an email. I was going to say most people get in contact with me and ask to be on these owner stories and tell everyone about their Porsches through Instagram. Stephen sent me an email, and I just want to say that, just a reminder to anyone else who wants to be on this series. I'm still recording them. I haven't finished. Even though we're up to number 31, I'm still going. So if you have a Porsche and you want to talk about it, and you just contact me through Instagram, or you can send me an email as well, which is through the Instagram as well. And then we can schedule a time for you to talk about your PorscheCooled owner story. So, Stephen, I always like to start these podcasts with, going back to when you first became interested, not just in cars, but when you first started noticing Porsche, and then lead on to the fact of when you eventually, bought your first Porsche. So how did Porsche come into your mindset? How did you start thinking about Porsche? Did you have family friends that had the car when you were a kid, or was it later in life? When did you start thinking, I really like to get myself a Porsche?
Well, let me start by saying that I think I've been into cars for as long as I've been able to walk. My father was an engineer at Ford Motor Company, so cars were very much part of our lives, as I say, from the beginning. And all sorts of cars, not just Ford cars, but anything and everything. I actually still have my first Porsche. It's a little model, which I think I got when I was about 7 or 8 years old, of a 911. I think I was always intrigued by shape of them. Like a lot of young children, I was into Scalextrics, and I had a Porsche 911 Scalextrics car. So always fascinated by them. I didn't really get into, I suppose, classic cars until the 1980s, and that wasn't buying, that was simply looking. It wasn't until I'd been working for a few years and I could start to indulge myself a little bit more. I started looking around. The first 911 I drove was actually in Jersey. I think it was something like an SC convertible from the early 80s. Okay. And I absolutely hated it. It had a ferocious clutch. It was heavy, and for those people that don't know Jersey, it's an island in the English Channel that's 9 miles by 5, has a maximum speed limit of 40 miles an hour. Despite that, it has a truly spectacular collection. There are some really fabulous vehicles over here.
Okay.
And I drove this 911 and thought, my God, this is awful. Why would anyone like a 911?
So whose 911 was that? Whose 911 was it that you drove?
It just belonged to somebody that I knew. It was a chance drive.
Okay.
As I say, I'm fairly sure it was about an 82. I think it was an SC convertible.
Okay.
And I literally consigned 911s to the dustbin and thought, that's it. I'm never going to have one. I came back to them in the early 2000s because I had a thing about, and I still do, about early 911s. That's pre-73 impact bumper ones, which I think look the best. And somebody I knew in Jersey, who was a very serious collector, put me on to the guys at Auto Farm in Oxford,
yes.
And a guy called Josh Sadler. and for those people with a long history, they will know Josh. I went to see Josh, and he had a 2.4S that he just restored. He had taken it up to 2.7, and he'd made it look like an SC. An ST, from the 1970-71 ST. And it was in blood orange, and I drove it, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And we did a deal on it there and then. It's a reasonably famous car because it was owned by a journalist called Chris Harvey, who wrote a book about 911s. And the car is actually on the front cover of the book. It had some magazine articles written about it. And, I loved it. It was one of those cars that was, every journey in it was an adventure. It was just a very, very exciting car.
So that's a very special car for your first 911. Yes.
It was, extremely challenging for someone like me to drive. I've not had a lot of experience of classics. At the time, I had an E30 M3 BMW, which I used to do track days with. And, M3s of that ilk are also fantastic cars, but they flatter your driving. You can put an M3 round the track, and you can come in and you can think, you've really cracked it, and you're a great driver. You don't do that with an old 911. It's a completely different experience, and I enjoyed it. I think I took it to France one day, down to Le Mans, and I was going, I think, fairly quickly, shall we say, on the motorway, and I suddenly realised that if this car got away from me, I was never ever going to be able to catch it.
Yeah. So it was So it was a 2.4 up to a 2.7, was it?
It was a 2.4S, and it had an enlargement to 2.7. It had the slightly flared arches on it, so it looked like an ST.
So let's just go back then. So that first Porsche that you drove, the Cabriolet SC, you think it was early 80s.
Yep.
Compared to this 72, isn't it? 72 911.
Yep.
What was it that was different? Can you recall what it was?
Yeah, it was
you hated the other one and you get into this one and you love it.
It was so much lighter. The clutch was lighter. The gear change was lighter. I think it helped. It looked so much nicer in my eyes. I'm not a huge fan of 911 Cabriolets. I think this just looked so striking. It sounded fantastic. It had twin pipes on the rear. And I think I was just caught in, I expected it to be really challenging to drive even at slow speeds, but found actually for just normal driving, it was quite easy. And it was just a joy to drive. If you wanted to push on with it, then I think you had to be quite careful.
Yeah. So what happened to that car? You don't still own that car though, do you?
Alas, no, I don't. I had it for a few years. I sold it. I sold it back to Auto Farm.
Okay.
Pretty much what I paid for it. So I thought at the time I had done a good deal. I'll share with you all that I sold it for about £30,000.
Really? What year was that, Stephen?
I sold it in 2005.
Okay, so now from my knowledge about the prices of 2.4Ss, aren't they somewhere around £120,000 today?
Thank you, Michael. Yes.
They are? Is that correct?
That's right. Well,
that was a good guess.
I know that because the car has sold recently.
Okay.
I don't know what made me do it, but about a month ago, I Googled the registration plate.
Oh, really?
Quite a well-known one. And Paul Stevens in Essex has sold it recently to somebody, and he had the history on the car. He made reference to my ownership of it, not by name, of course, but he made reference to the period I owned it. And there's an article in it in Porsche 911.
Okay.
Or 911 and Porsche World, I think it is.
Yes.
There's an article in the December magazine about it.
Okay, I'll have to look out for that one.
So I'm pretty sure that it went for a six-figure sum.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's so well sorted and such a good history, and it's going through good hands as well. It's being sold by good dealers, isn't it? So
yeah. So the owner, the guy that bought it the next owner after me, I think he's only just sold it. So he did the sensible thing. He kept the car long term, and he loved it and enjoyed it.
We always have these stories, Stephen. We always have these stories of the ones we missed or the ones we let go. So what was the reasoning why what was the reason why you let this one go? Because it's in orange as well, right? It's in one of the best colors. Not only that, it was orange, correct?
I suppose at the time, I was having quite a tough time at work, and I didn't feel it was right to have these cars at a time when, quite frankly, I was laying people off at work.
Oh, okay.
I thought it just didn't seem right to, as I say, have these cars and to be talking about them. And people at work knew I had them because I was working in a small company. And then in the next breath, laying people off.
Okay.
So I thought the better thing to do was to sell a car.
Oh, that's understandable. That's a good way of looking at it. So you've got the 911. You sell it. What happens next? What comes next?
Well, I waited for a couple of years,
yes.
And then I bought a Mercedes 500e.
Yes,
which is in part Porsche, of course.
It is. Because which some people don't know about, do they? It's some people know about it and some people don't know about it. I only have a little bit of knowledge about it, but it was designed in collaboration with Porsche.
Well, it was the basic car was of course the Mercedes, and they, for whatever reason, wanted to build a high performance, and they asked Porsche to help them. And it's interesting because the car would, as I understand, I think Porsche did the chassis and the drivetrain. They would assemble that, and the car, over a period of 18 days, would pass between Porsche and Mercedes backwards and forwards while it was built. And I think it took about 18 days to build. They were handmade, and yet they were built in quite large numbers. And the best way I can describe them is they look like a Parisian taxi, but they go like a Ferrari.
It's the 500e you told me, which...
It's the 500, yes. So built, I think, between about 89 and 94, 95.
Yeah, my knowledge of it was, and I can't even remember the car that Porsche was doing. Porsche's factory was overloaded, wasn't it? Their production line or something was overloaded. They were developing something and they didn't have the production capability to do it. So Mercedes-Benz, I'm sorry. And then
I think it was Mercedes who were very, at the time, I think they were
Mercedes-Benz.
the S-Class.
Yeah, that's right, the S-Class. Yes. And then they gave it to Porsche to help them manufacture it. Yeah, that's right. But they're very collectible today as well, aren't they? There's not so many that come up for sale.
No, they are very collectible. I'm a huge F1 fan, and I knew that lots of the F1 drivers used to drive them. And I suppose there was an appeal there. I bought it actually with a friend, and I saw it for sale. I think it was in Blackpool. Went up. I'd never driven one, but had a go in it, and just thought it was a fantastic car because by modern standards, it's not particularly quick, but it's a fast enough car. It has an air suspension, I believe, so it's very, very comfortable, and it feels bulletproof. You very often see them for sale with very high mileage on them because I think they were widely used, unsurprisingly, in Germany. People running up and down the autobahns.
Yes. And and that year of Mercedes is having a big, it's very popular at the moment, isn't it? That era of those Mercs, sedans,
it is because
wagons.
They were beautifully built.
Yeah, they're beautifully built, and it's still a beautiful. I love the look of it. It's a great looking. I think it's a great looking Merc.
It was nice because it was quite understated, and we did a great. Had a great time. We did a road trip to the Monaco Historic in it, and you could literally just sit on the motorway all day at very, very high speed, and it was very, very comfortable. And it was just a lovely car. The check seats inside, lovely features like electric rear blinds.
Nice.
All sorts of things. You'd never track one, but if you were going to do a lot of long distance motoring, then I can really recommend them.
Yeah, and they're pretty bulletproof today, aren't they? Like you said, they've got a lot of miles on them, a lot of kilometers, but they're still reasonably reliable. They're still a reasonably reliable car, and people
We
are
had no
searching them
issues.
out. Yeah, exactly.
We had no issues with it. I mean, we had it for a few years.
So there's a trend here, Stephen. You've had this beautiful 1972 911 in orange, very special. Now you've got the Mercedes 500e developed by Porsche. So you're on a very good track here. So what comes after the Merc? You obviously don't have the Merc today. You sold it.
Yep, the Merc went. So after that, there was, I suppose you would say, a segue into a Ferrari, Ferrari 456 manual.
Yes.
Which actually we sold last year. I shared that with my brother. I can talk about Ferraris all day, but this is a Porsche podcast, so I won't, except to say.
I haven't hidden the fact that I like Ferraris, so I have actually spoken about it on a few of the podcasts before. But the 456 is another one which I noticed there's someone I follow on Instagram who's just bought one actually, who's got a Porsche and he's just bought a 456. They're quite good value, aren't they?
They are extremely good value to buy.
Hard to maintain.
They can be expensive to maintain. I mean, we had ours for about 9 years, my brother and I.
Right.
And you can go along for a few years and you can get sort of moderate bills. But then all of a sudden you get hit with a really substantial bill, particularly for engine work. And we had one or two of those. So if I look back on the whole ownership experience, the car is a magnificent car. Again, if you're doing a lot of long distance motoring, it's absolutely fantastic. The manual gearbox is a delight. It's a very comfortable car. It's very easy to drive.
It's a nice looking car though. The 456.
And
I like it. Yeah, I like it. Some people don't, but I actually like it. I think it's a really nice shape.
Not as exciting to drive as a 550 Maranello.
No.
But in my view, it's a better looking car. And if you want an understated Ferrari, that's comfortable, and you can do long distance in, then it's a very good buy.
Okay, cast your memory back, because the segue into the Ferrari, and everyone, I know the listeners like to hear comparisons between different cars. How did it feel from driving your 72 911 to your 456 Ferrari? Was it a big, huge power difference? What was it that you can remember was the main sort of feeling you had in that car compared to the 911?
Well, the Ferrari was much easier to drive. I mean, to give you some idea, I think the Ferrari weighed about 1,600 kilos, something like that. The 911 weighed 1,000 kilos.
Right.
The Ferrari had twice the power of 911. But if you drag race them, I suspect the Ferrari would have won, but perhaps not by a great deal. But the driving experience, totally different. One is a flat six rear engine car. One's a front engine V12.
Yeah.
Ferrari, easy to drive, quite frankly. Almost anyone could drive one. Say very comfortable.
What was more fun though? Which one did you enjoy driving more?
I think it probably depended on circumstances. On a dark, wet motorway in England in the rush hour, I'd rather be in the Ferrari.
Yeah.
But on an open road, I think one night I had to get the 911 back to Jersey. I got up at 3:00 in the morning and drove across Salisbury Plain just as the sun was rising. There was nothing on the road. And I certainly remember that journey in the 911 as being one of the most exciting I had in it. So on a clear road, I think that the 911 was utterly glorious.
Fantastic. All right, so we're into a Ferrari now. How long do you own the Ferrari for? Very long?
We had 9 years we owned the Ferrari.
Okay, so quite a long time. So you really did enjoy that car?
We really enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely. We kept it in England. There was absolutely no point in having a car like that in Jersey. But we used it. We used it in France and in the UK. And it was just a great thing to have.
And this was a car you owned with your brother, you said?
I did, yes.
And so was that the reasoning why you sold it? Because you just both...
I think we just felt that we'd probably driven it 15 or 16,000 miles. We had done everything we wanted to do with it. Also, I had the 912 in restoration.
We'll get onto that
as
one.
well.
Yeah.
And my wife tells me that you can have too many cars. I don't agree with it myself, but
You can have not enough.
can.
You can have not enough garages, I think.
Well,
About
that's
too many
absolutely
cars.
it. That's absolutely the case. And having already built an extra garage, I can relate to that.
All right, so you're driving a Ferrari. You've got this Ferrari. You just mentioned the 912, which we'll get into. Where did the Boxster fit into this? Because you mentioned to me you owned a Boxster as well.
Well, yeah, I did. I had I bought a Boxster, a new one in where are we? 2014.
Okay.
So I'd always liked the Boxster. I particularly like the shape of it. It's the 981, isn't it? Is that right?
981, yeah.
981. I particularly like the shape and the styling of that. And living on an island which is a little bit funnier than the UK, I thought it was sensible to have a convertible. And I'm quite anal about specifications on cars, and I wanted to just spec one in the way that I wanted.
Okay, so you purchased this new, Stephen?
So I ordered it and purchased it new, and I kept that actually until last year. So I kept it for 6 years, and guess what? I've sold it to my brother who has it today.
Okay, so how did you spec it then? Because I know the listeners are always interested to know, personal preferences.
I put on the Carrera alloys. It was in grey, Ajak grey. Living in Jersey, it makes far more sense to have PDK than it does manual.
Yep.
I know a lot of purists would go for a manual, but it doesn't make much sense on a small island. I had the bow. No, I didn't have the bows. I bought an upgraded sound package, which I think was a subwoofer that goes in the boot, which was okay. I think with the benefit of hindsight, the Bose system would have been better. And I had sat nav in it because the dealer said, don't buy it without putting.
Okay. What about exhaust? No exhaust, no sports exhaust?
No, I thought the exhaust was fine. I didn't want to go crazy on the spec because I'm an accountant and I wanted to make sure I got reasonable value out of it. It wasn't sort of terribly expensive when it was finished.
Was it a Boxster S or a Boxster?
No, it was a standard Boxster. I had read an article which said that in many ways the standard Boxster is one of the very best Porsches because you get all of the Porsche DNA and in a sort of a reasonably good value package.
Yeah. No, I've read that as well. Even with the 986 Boxster, even with the generation before, people say that the standard base is just as good. And I've had a few conversations with people who have bought the base on owner stories, which you might have listened to with Stephen in Australia and Jeff just recently in San Diego. And they both got a base and they both, there's plenty of power, plenty of enjoyment.
Absolutely. I thought the car was quick enough. Before I bought it, I did a day at the Porsche Experience at Silverstone, because I wanted to really try the car out. And I found that very useful if you're buying a new car, because you can basically tell Porsche the car you want, and then you get to drive it for a few hours. And I just thought the car was fabulous. I tried a 911, and of course, 911 was brilliant. But I thought to myself, well, the 911 is twice the price of the Boxster.
Yeah.
And I think the Boxster must be 90% of the 911.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure I'm ever going to extract that last 10%.
Yeah, good value. So during the ownership, were there any issues that arose with the Boxster? Anything that you want to tell the listeners that happened to it, or was it really reasonably reliable?
I would say it was totally reliable. I had for the 6 years I owned it, I had no problems with it at all. When I got it, I actually ran it in by driving it down through France and to Italy to watch the Mille Miglia.
Oh, okay, fantastic.
So we did about a 2,500 mile road trip. I took it on a couple of trips through Europe. It went to the UK a few times, and it was totally reliable.
Fantastic.
I don't recall anything going wrong with it. My brother will eventually listen to this podcast, so I hope he has the same experience.
The other trend here is that you seem to be doing lots of road trips. I like that. You seem to be going to Europe and France and going to these places and enjoying the cars that you own, which is fantastic.
When you live on a small island,
you need to get away.
Because I come from the UK originally, but it's very difficult in a small island, whereas I say, where a speed limit of 40 miles an hour, which is fairly rigidly enforced. I tell you that I got stopped once in the orange 911 for doing 60 miles an hour in a 40 zone.
Right.
And I was offered a £200 fine or 14 days in jail.
Wow.
You can see that they don't have a system here, and quite rightly.
Okay, so you need to get away. You need to go to Europe and start driving the roads around there. Then
you need to get away.
Yeah.
You absolutely need to get away.
All right, so you got the Boxster. During the Boxster ownership, so what else is there? Is there anything else before the 912 comes during Boxster ownership, or when does the 912 arise?
The 912 arrived in August 2019. Okay. I mentioned earlier, I think, that I've always loved old 911s. I think the shape, for me, the shape is the best of all.
Yes.
What I realised is that when you buy a car, I think it's good to have a plan as to what you're going to do with it, and because that will shape the car you buy. And I wanted to have a go at an historic rally.
Okay.
Still want to do that. And I remembered back that one of the cars I've most enjoyed was the E30 M3 that I bought back in about 2002. I'd done quite a lot of track days with it, and I'd really used and enjoyed the car. I bought another one later on that was a very, very low mileage, a real collector's car, and we never used it because we were, quite frankly, it was too valuable, the mileage was too low, and I thought, there isn't much point in owning an M3 that you don't drive.
Yeah, it's a great car. It's a very good car.
It is a great car. And so I thought, well, if I'm to get an old Porsche again, I want to be able to use it, and I don't want to be too precious about it.
Okay, so you're thinking about getting another Porsche. Do you start looking for a 912, or do you start looking for a 60 to 70s, late 60s to early 70s 911? What do you start looking for, and how do you come across this 912?
I started looking for a 912 principally because I thought if I'm to get an old 911 and I'm to do some historic rallies in it, it's going to be quite a serious purchase. I'd also had an old 911, and I thought I knew the 912, let's say, was the underdog, and I wanted to try one. And what I typically do is I start by I'll buy some books. I will do like everybody else. I'll go onto the internet. I'll do research. I'll read magazine articles so that I can build a body of knowledge myself. And then I'll start looking to see what's available and what parameters are. What do you get for your money?
Yes.
So I started doing that. And then I did everything that you shouldn't do. I remember it very clearly. I was literally sitting on my sofa one day, and I saw this car for sale in Kent at a garage that happened to be very near my mother's place.
Right.
They're not Porsche specialists, but they had a 912. It was Irish green, and it looked. And I thought, well, this is very handy because I'm going to be over next week. I could just nip down and have a look at it. And I did that. I drove it. I thought it was lovely to drive. 912s are, you absolutely notice the difference between a 912 and a 911 because you don't feel that rear end weight. It's a very nicely balanced car.
Yes.
It's not fast, but it's fast enough. And I wanted a car that I could bring home to Jersey, that I could use around the island, that I wasn't going to get frustrated with.
Okay.
So it struck me as being, ideal. The dealer I bought it from, I think, was a very genuine guy, but he didn't know anything about old Porsches. It didn't.
What sort of condition was this car in, though, Stephen? Had it been through any type of restoration process, or was it just pretty much original?
It had been through quite a lot. It had quite a lot of work done at Revival Cars.
Okay.
And I didn't have a lot of history, but I could see the builds from the previous 3 or 4 years at Revival Cars. So I knew they're 912 specialists in the UK. So
very good.
I knew that they had They'd cast their eye over the car. It looked pretty good. It was. I managed to figure out that it was a matching numbers car, which I later had confirmed by Porsche. I wasn't obsessed with the idea of matching numbers because of the way I wanted to use it, but I know that it will help the residual value if I want to sell it one day.
Well, there's a question there, because I don't know whether you saw this, and I'm just going to just go off track a little bit. Bring a Trailer in the US, an auction just finished there last night. A 65 Irish green, 912.
Oh, yes, I saw it.
Painted dial, 3 dial, and it sold for 85 or 95,000 US dollars. And it's not matching numbers.
Yeah.
So I don't know the value of matching numbers. If there is value in matching numbers, and well, then it's even higher than that. But the prices are getting a little bit crazy when you think about it, when it's up to that amount already in the US.
Yes, they are. And we'll come on to a couple of stories about 912 values.
But I just want to go to the dealer that you bought this from. So this dealer was pretty much oblivious. He didn't really know much about the 912. Did he have many of the records from the previous owner, apart from the 912 revival service records? Was there anything else that came with the car?
No, there was a document to say the car had the initial registration date. So it's a November 68 912. So it's a 69 model year. It was first registered in Belgium, but it spent some time in Holland, or it's the other way around. I can't remember. But then there's a long, a sort of a long gap with nothing before the car arrived in the UK. I think in 2015. And like a lot of 912s, I think it had suffered because when their values were extremely low, people didn't bother to restore them or even repair them properly. They just fixed them up, quite frankly.
Yes, true. True.
And naively, I thought that I would know what I was buying, so I didn't have an inspection, which I should have had.
Okay, so you bought it from the dealer. You didn't really get anything checked. You didn't check underneath the undercarriage. You didn't get a PPI. You didn't get anything done. No. You just literally went there, liked the color, liked how it looked, and purchased the car.
And I drove it, and it seemed to drive well.
And from the service records from 912 Revival, was there a lot of work that had been done? Did that give you confidence to buy it?
Yeah, there was a reasonable amount of engine work. Yeah, a reasonable amount of engine work had been done on the car. So I could see that a good few £1,000 spent on it.
So once you bought the car and once you took it home and you started getting it checked over, what were the major things you found that were issues that you thought were issues?
I should sort of start by saying that I drove it 400 miles home through France, and it ran beautifully. No issues at all. Got it home, took it to a local Porsche specialist in Jersey, and he had a look over it, and he said, "Look, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with the car." He said it's the engine, the mechanics are pretty good on it. He said the bodywork's a bit ropey because, like a lot of these cars, it suffered from basically just poor quality work on it. It had a much later windscreen in it. The panels they were okay, but the fit on them wasn't tremendous. On it. He said, "Look, if you're never going to win a concours to this car, but it's mechanically sound, and so you can drive it."
Well, it's a good sign that you drove it that many miles back. I mean, that must have been, that's reassuring, and also a great thing to do when you pick up a new Porsche as well. Like that experience that you've actually driven that car and it's seen you through. It's actually got you back home.
Absolutely. And what I decided to do was to keep the car for between 6 and 12 months, just drive it. So rather than rush into changing anything on the car, just to drive it first and get used to it and then see what I wanted to do with it. So I did that. And then I decided that I would, I'd look at a reasonably extensive amount of work car. And it's difficult to get that done in Jersey. There are some very good people here.
Yes.
But they don't have enough specialist experience because they don't see enough of the same car.
Okay.
So I decided to go to the UK or take it there.
So what's the process then? What have you decided? What's the process when you want to do a full restoration on a 912? What have you decided to do? Do you take it to? Well, tell the listeners who you've taken it to, I guess.
Well, I've taken it to Andy Prill.
Okay.
Prill Classic. I thought about Auto Farm.
Yes.
Because obviously I'd had a good experience of dealing with them a long time ago. But I knew from a little bit of research that Andy was a specialist in 912s. He is or was the technical advisor to the 912 registry.
Yes.
I knew that he'd done a lot of work. I had a chat with him by phone, and he said, "Look, I've done at least 100 912 engine rebuilds."
Okay.
So I said, "Look, you need to see the car."
Yes.
I sent him a few pictures. We had a little bit of a chat, but ultimately he said, "You have to bring the car to me, and I will go through the car and tell you what I think." So I sent the car to him, and then I went over, and he said, "I'm going to take the engine out while you're here, and I'm going to strip the engine while you're here, so that you can see what I see."
Okay.
And
so he goes through the car top to bottom, Stephen. He goes through the car top to bottom, and then you go and see him, and he gives you a list of everything that he thinks you should do. Is that correct?
He goes through the car top to bottom, and he gives you a list of everything you could do.
Okay.
And of course, some of those things he says you should do.
Yes.
And some of those things you might want to do. So the way we're approaching it is he's doing a complete engine rebuild.
Yes.
Because once we started stripping it down, again, he said, there's nothing fundamentally wrong with your engine, but it hasn't been rebuilt for quite a long time. So it would do, you do well to have it done.
So with the engine? Sorry, Stephen. With the engine, yep. How are you attacking it? Are you wanting to get get it back to the factory reliability of the time? Are you trying to get more power from the engine? What is the direction you're going in with the engine?
Well, I do want to get a little bit more power and a little bit more drivability from it. What I discovered from Andy was that I can't say most, but a very significant number of 912s that are around have already had, I think, what they call the big bore upgrade.
Yeah.
They're taken out from 1600, I think, to about 1720. Because you can do that without significant works to the engine. You basically, I'm not mechanically minded, but I think you basically just achieve that. And what Andy said was, look, I can rebuild the engine that will just give you a little bit more power. It'll be just a little bit more tractable, but it won't fundamentally alter the characteristics of the engine, which I didn't want to do, because what's the point of buying a 912 if you're going to, in my view, if you're going to completely alter its character?
Yeah, true.
So to give it some numbers, I think he said we'll take it from about 90 horsepower to about 110, 120.
Okay, good.
Which is quite nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Now, the engine rebuild led on to him having a look at the gearbox, because just before it went over to him, I had a slight problem selecting the gear. So you can guess where that took me. So the gearbox has also been completely rebuilt as well.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues was the wiring. The garage in Jersey suggested that the wiring of the car had been done by a blind man. Andy had a look at it and said it's actually dangerous.
Oh, okay.
So I said, okay, that's fine. That's a given. So the car will be completely rewired. We discovered some things about the bodywork, like the actual floor tray wasn't from 912. It was from something else, and that.
I was going to ask you about the floors, actually, because that's a common. And the listeners know that I'm looking at 912s, and the floors are always a common issue, aren't they? Because of the rust in 911s or 912s. So the floors were switched out and done.
It was something else. It was probably an old. It wasn't a 912.
So how is he rectifying that? How is he restoring that?
We're taking it out and putting a 912.
Okay.
There's no rust there. but I just didn't like the idea of having something that wasn't a 912.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. Yeah, I'd be the same. How's the bodywork in general, though, Stephen? Is there much rust?
Pretty good. Rust-free. No, it's rust-free.
And in the bonnet, in the frunk, it's okay?
There was a tiny little bit of rust in the front, or as Flat Cap calls it.
Yeah, what is that word he's using?
He calls it the fruit. There was a tiny little bit of rust down there, but it was surface rust, and that was actually taken out very easily.
Yeah, quite common.
But one of the issues was that I didn't know this until I had the car, that 912s, or at least some 912s, had 2 batteries.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. And my one had 1 battery, which wasn't properly fitted in.
Okay.
So what Andy said is it needs some body work doing to it, so that you can come back to having the proper 2 batteries in it. So that led on.
Sorry, Stephen, was it a particular year that had 2 batteries? Because I've never come across that either. Or
I have to say I didn't inquire as much as perhaps I should have done on that.
Okay.
I took what Andy said, and he said, look, you need to go back to the 2 batteries. The battery you have in is not right, we may as well correct that, because we're rewiring the car. There is some other sort of minor body work to do around the front, and they're going to do the floor tray as well. And that's where we are with the car, by the way. It's still there. I'm hoping it will be back by probably by June.
So when did you give it to Andy? What was the time frame he gave you to do this restoration?
I gave it to him at the end of September. It was always going to take at least 6 months. Obviously, COVID had an impact.
Yes. So are you doing anything to the paintwork? Are you keeping the paintwork as is? Or
I'm leaving the paintwork. The paintwork's in pretty good condition, and quite frankly, the cost of having the car completely resprayed to me is far outweighs any benefit. If I'm going to use the car and I don't want to be too precious about it, I don't see the point of having a complete respray. The chrome work is fine, but it's actually got quite a nice patina on it. So I'm absolutely happy to leave that. The priority is a nice running, reliable and safe car.
But I like that better, don't you? I like it better.
I do.
The full concourse ones, and I know a few have come up in the UK. I know there was one in Wales that came up that was fully done in grey and it looked beautiful. But there's something nice when the paintwork's a little bit semi-original and it's got that character and patina, as long as it's reliable. How's the? I do like a clean interior, I have to say. I mean, some of the 912s I see look a bit messy. Are you doing much to the interior?
No, the interior is pretty good. The seats were rebuilt before I bought the car. They don't have the Pepita pattern on them. They have an unusual sort of red and black check, which actually I quite like.
Okay.
Car's got headrests, which were the original headrests that came with the car.
Yeah.
It was spec'd like that originally.
Nicer with the headrests. What about your steering? What about the steering wheel? Is it the hockey puck or is it the other one?
It's the as far as I can tell, the original steering wheel in the car. Now it's one of those things I'm a little bit anal of.
I do like the wood ones though. I like it when they got the original wood ones.
I'm not so bothered. I wanted a prototype, and I know you can buy replicas, but I kind of wanted to see if I could get an original. Andy had a few and was good enough to let me have one. So I think it'll be an early 70s prototypo wheel that we have in the car, which is just a little bit thinner than the modern ones.
Nice.
I'm tall, so the standard wheel is a little bit cumbersome for me to use. So something that's slightly smaller, a little bit sportier is nice. Don't want a radio, so I'll have the radio plate in.
Okay.
I suppose the other thing is the other thing that we debated was carburetors.
Yes. Has it got the original? Oh no.
It has Webers on it, but in a box that I was handed when I bought the car with the original Solex.
Are you going to put those back in?
Well, I am. I went online, and I have to say I came away quite confused, because for every person that said put back the original Solexes. Someone else said, no, put the Webers on. I simply deferred to Andy, who said, look, the car came with Solexes. He said, yours are in perfectly good condition. I will rebuild them. I know how to set them up. I think you should put the Solexes back on. So I've said, look, okay, that's absolutely fine by me.
I think that's good advice, though, isn't it? I mean, that is the thing that I've been reading and come away with it. If you know someone who is good at restoring them or setting them up, then you're okay. But there are a lot of people who don't know how to set them up, I think, with the Solex. That's what the issue is.
That's the impression I got. I mean, I'm, much to my father's great disappointment, who was an engineer, I'm mechanically inept. And so I do need to rely on other people.
Yes.
And so I'm relying totally on Andy to do this.
Well, that's good advice. I think he's giving you good advice. It sounds like, I mean, you've gone to one of the really good specialists, that's for sure. So of the list that Andy gave you, of all the things he had on the list for you to do, what did you leave out? What did you decide not to do?
I'm not having the body off and resprayed. So I'm not doing that. I'm not doing anything. Well, but we didn't even talk about the interior because I said we would leave the interior alone. Mechanically, I'm having everything done because I think the car's away for six, probably 9 months. I might as well use that time to get everything done. It's not terribly convenient for me, of course. I can't just drive it down the road and get in to do stuff.
Yeah, true.
So I'd rather say, well, you're going to have the car for a long time. Just do everything mechanically that you think needs to be done to it. And then and on the bodywork, let's just do at the moment what we consider to be pretty much essential to do. But let's leave it at that. As I say, we don't need to do anything else to the body. Doesn't need a respray.
How are the wheels and the suspension side of it? Are they
the wheels? Well, I was lucky actually because it has an original set of Fuchs with it. Okay. But the dealer also gave me a set of steel wheels. I'm actually going to put the steels on. They're in my garage at the moment here. Great. And
love the steel wheels.
I do as well. I'm debating about whether to have it lowered very slightly. I know that's a hot topic.
Yeah, I know. I'm not sure about. I mean, I think it looks good. And Nick at the Classic Series, who's been on Owner Stories from the UK, who's got the white one, he lowered his. And yes. I know Ajmal's in the process of lowering his himself. I do like them when they're lowered, but I kind of like them when they're a bit high. I don't know. I think for me, I kind of like that look.
I think I'm actually going to have to put the steels on it. Oh, I'm also having the Danska Sports exhaust on it.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
So I think that will just.
That sounds great. Sounds really good.
A little bit better. I think I'm actually going to have to stand by somebody and say, right, lower the car. Now let me have a look at that. Does that look right? Now either lower it a bit more or take it up a bit.
Yeah, I mean, it looks good.
I'll make a decision there.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, it looks good both ways. I don't know. I think for me, I think I'd keep it at original. I mean, I guess it depends on how it drives and how it feels and how, what suspension you're running and how the suspension feels and all that side of thing, how the shocks are, if you've upgraded the shocks.
It does. It's got Pony shocks on it.
Okay.
Which I believe was an upgrade because one of the things I did was I didn't have because I didn't have the history, and I don't think in the UK at the moment you can get a certificate of authenticity from Porsche.
All right.
But I reached out to Porsche EB and I gave them the details of the car. So I gave them the chassis.
Yes.
They came back and they confirmed the original spec of the car in a letter.
Oh, that's good.
Which I thought was very good. So they confirmed that it is a matching numbers car. They confirmed the colour is Irish green.
Yes.
And they confirmed that the car was ordered with the options ordered were pony shocks and headrests.
Fantastic.
In a letter. So that was quite good.
So for someone that's listening, someone like me as well, someone who's listening who wants to buy a 912 and they find one that's a bit of a mess, what is the sort of, and you don't have to divulge this, but what is the sort of money you have to put aside for a restoration like this based on the cost of the car? Are you talking about, based on a value of a 912 now in the UK, you're talking about half the value? You're talking about the full value you have to add back in? What sort of cost would you have to put aside to do this in the future? If I bought a 912 now and I think, hey, I want to do what Stephen's done, I want to fix it up, I'm going to take it to Andy Prill and get it fixed up.
Well, Andy's, he won't mind me saying, he's not the cheapest person to use.
Yeah, no.
But he doesn't aspire to be the cheapest people. So I think, I mean, it depends on obviously the level that you go to. One of the problems with the 912 is that once you get into the body, there's no difference between restoring a 912 and a 2.2S.
Yes.
It's a 150, 200,000 pound car. I think you can easily double what you've spent.
Okay.
So I mean, I paid a little bit too much probably for my car. I don't mind sharing. It cost me
40,000.
40, yeah.
Which is a good price now, Stephen.
It's a good price now.
A year later, that's actually pretty good.
It may not have been a couple of years ago. The restoration is going to take me to a place which is beyond the value of the car. But that's, for me, at the moment, that's okay because I'm going to use it. I think if I was going to sell it, then I would just lose money on it.
Yes.
But I was never planning to do that. I want to use the car for a while and enjoy it. And so for me,
yes,
it's worth doing. But I think if you're going to have it restored by a professional and you're going to have a lot of work done, then I think you can spend anything between 20 and 50,000 doing it. So it isn't that difficult if you want a perfect 912 to end up with something that's cost you, and I haven't spent this much, but that's cost you 80,000, 90,000 pounds.
Yes.
I had this discussion with Andy and he said, yes, that's true. But if you have a really, really good one, you just might get that for it in this market. Now, to me, they're probably not worth that much.
Yeah, a lot of people don't think the 912s are worth it. And I think it's wrong because, you look at 65 to 68, 65 to 69 911s. You look at 65 911s, right? And the price that they're fetching. And,
six figures.
Yeah, 6 figures. And you think about that 65 912 that just sold and bring a trailer for 85,000. You know what I mean? And that's good value. It still is good value. You know what I mean? And 65s tend to get a little, I don't know. The 65 912s seem to be getting more sought after because they're the 3-dial. I prefer the 5-dial. I don't really like the painted dial.
I prefer the 5-dial as well.
See, my whole idea of the 912s changed a bit because originally I thought I just wanted a 69. I just wanted the long wheelbase, the 69.
Yeah.
I've kind of lost that idea now. I mean, if a 69 comes up, then sure, I'll probably choose that over a 68 or a 67. Out of all the model years, which is the one that's less sought after? Do you know in the 912s?
No, I can't say I do. I wouldn't get hung up actually personally between a short or long wheelbase.
There's not much difference, is there?
No, I'm not sure that someone like myself could really tell. I think you're much better off saying, first of all, what am I going to do with this car? Is it something I want to polish at weekends and just take down to the pub? In which case, I probably want something which is a little bit more original.
Yeah.
Do I really want to have one eye on resale in a couple of years' time? In which case, again, you're inevitably going to be drawn towards an original and one with history. But if you're going to say, actually, I want to track this car or I want to use it for some like historic rallying, then you want a mechanically sound car. But do you really care whether it's matching numbers, whether it's short or long wheelbase?
Yeah, true. No, I think
those things become less important.
I think you're doing the right thing. I mean, I think, you've picked a really good place to do it. I mean, I always think 912 Revival is a great place to get something work done as well in the UK. But I forgot about Andy Prill. I mean, I remember reading about him before. So I think you've done in the right direction. You're going to have a really well-sorted 912. And even the money you put into it, we can see the value of them, UK values especially. The values are rising very quickly and people are starting to notice them.
More by luck than judgment.
Yeah, and people are starting to notice them though, aren't they? People are starting to think, hang on, they're not the underdog to the 911 anymore.
I think for some people they always will be. You can read plenty of articles that will tell you that an early a 912 from that era is a nicer drive than a stock 911. Now, I haven't driven anything earlier than a 69 911, so I'm not sure I could really say. What I could say is that compared to the E that I drove, the 912 is easier to drive and it's easier to extract the performance. And I'd feel much more comfortable driving the 912 hard than I would an old 911, because we all know they can bite you.
Yes. So before we started recording, I was talking to you about how I saw those two cars at European Collectibles in the US. Do you have any friends that have bought 911s or 912s from the US? And is it an easy process to get them back into the UK?
I've got a friend who bought a car from European Collectibles. I think it was, he'll listen to this podcast, so if I get it wrong, he'll be able to tell me. I think it was a 69 2.2E.
Okay.
He obviously bought it unseen, but he had a very good experience with them. He had the car shipped to the UK. It took a few months. And he sent the car when it arrived. I think he sent it to Auto Farm, and they told him it was a very good straight car. I drove it and thought it was an excellent car. Drove very well. He had it for a few years. He did very well on it. He sold it for quite a bit more, I think, than he paid for it.
Right.
But he had no issue.
Yeah, they always seem to get some quite good Porsches in there. They've got a nice silver 911T in there at the moment as well. For about
I've seen that.
You seen that one? Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's
did you
a nice car.
Did you watch the video, Stephen, on YouTube? He's put a video on his YouTube channel, European Collectibles.
No, I haven't.
And he's got a driving video, and I tell you, it makes you even like it anymore. I mean, it seems to be very spirited, that car.
I think silver's a great color.
And I think the price that he's got it at is $114,000 US. I think it is somewhere like that, 110, 118 maybe.
Yeah.
And I think that price
Is it fully restored?
It's fully restored. Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good price.
Another friend of mine has just bought from Camford Classics.
Where is that?
That is down in. Oh goodness me! He's going to be shouting at the podcast when he listens to it. It's is it Dorset one, somewhere down there.
Okay, I haven't heard of that. I'll check that out.
But Camford, again, quite well known. He's bought it's a 911T, but it has a 2.7 engine in it.
Okay.
In a lovely metallic blue. I don't think it's Minerva blue, which is quite a well-known colour for them. But he bought that literally a few weeks ago, and he tells me the car is absolutely wonderful.
Wow,
he loves it.
Fantastic. So you've got a lot of friends who are into Porsches, and that's even better.
Yeah, someone else just bought a 996 GT3 the other day.
Oh, really? Great. Mark 1 or Mark 2?
It's I think it's a Mark 2.
Nice.
I think it's a Mark 2.
Nice.
My next door neighbour has a 356.
Oh, really? Which
model?
So,
yes.
A 356 A, B, or C?
It's a C, very, very original car, low mileage. A wonderful car. Sounds absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, the 356 is a weird one. I've never been a huge fan, but after speaking to Todd at Stone City Outlaw, who was on Owner Stories, and after speaking to PJ and Mark at Mark and Cars, who have got 356s, there's something about them. There is something about them.
I think we're all like that, aren't we? I think that we fixate on a car, and our friends and our colleagues can try to talk us out of it, but actually we've already made our mind up. We want this car, and we just simply go after the car we want. And I guess that's the right thing, because
the 912 is like that. People are trying to talk me out of the 912. They keep trying to talk me out of it.
Don't.
Even my wife is trying to talk me out of it.
Don't be talked out of it. I took my wife out in the orange 2.4S. I took her once, and at the end of the journey, she said to me, "Don't ever take me in this car again." But the 912, this is fine. It's more comfortable. It didn't have bucket seats. 912 doesn't have bucket seats. This is okay. I'm looking forward to when
you get it back to Jersey and back to driving it for the first time, Stephen. It's going to be great. Are you going to go to the UK and see it just before it's finished?
I'm going to go to the UK and drive it home.
Drive it home?
And
fantastic.
I was hoping to drive it to the Le Mans Classic, which they've just deferred. But all things being equal, I will certainly run it to the Le Mans Classic next year. I'm a very regular visitor to Goodwood. So I would certainly try to get it to Goodwood.
Great.
Probably maybe to the Revival or something. And then I don't think it's going to happen now, but there is an historic rally. I think it's Liège, Brescia Liège.
Okay.
So a variation on the original Liège Rome Liège.
Yes.
Which I would love to do with the car one day. That's the type of thing I want to do with it.
Oh, it's fantastic. You're going to have some great fun with it. Hopefully I'll get to see the pictures of this car. I'll get to see it one day.
Yeah,
it sounds like it's
sure.
going to be look fantastic. Okay, you know what I'm going to ask you? You've got the 912. Are you still looking for something else? Are you still looking for another car to add to your garage?
Well, I'm going to be safe that my wife is never going to listen to this. Because apparently, as I say, you can have too many cars. I have a 420 SL Mercedes, 1989 car. So
420, okay, yeah.
But those of the listeners who are old enough think of the Bobby Ewing car from Dallas.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
But it's done 23,000 miles. It's an original car. And that's a little bit of a garage queen. I love that car. I don't have much more space. I have a new Golf R arriving, hopefully in a few months' time.
Okay, nice car.
As a daily drive. Yeah, I think so, actually. And again,
very powerful.
I should probably have just settled for a GTI, but I just wanted to try an R.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to talk myself out of it. So, I suppose the answer is I'm always looking. I haven't got enough garage space for anything else, and so another car would mean storage away from home, which is a little bit of a drag.
Yes.
I wonder about 911. I mean, if I was looking at a 911 now, I think that the 997 offers a lot of car for the money.
Yeah, I agree.
I've actually I drove a friend's Carrera S. He'll remember because we took it to Spa to run in, and I just thought it was the best car at the time I'd ever driven.
Yeah, no, look, I love my 997, but I did say, I have actually said a couple of times, if you can find a good 997.2 Carrera 2S in manual, I think that car is going to be such a classic in years to come. It's going to be such a fantastic car. There's not that many of them around due to the time that it came out, and in Australia, they didn't actually bring out the GTS in manual. They only had the GTS in the GTS in PDK. So that's why that Carrera 2S, especially for people of the Australian listeners, it is a very special car, especially in the 0.2, because some people still want to avoid the 0.1 due to IMS issues. I don't have a big problem with it, but owning a 997.1, and if a 0.2 came up and a Carrera S came up in a reasonable price and a good spec, I would be tempted. I have to say, I would be tempted to upgrade to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the 997 is it's a classic looking 911. They drive very well indeed. They're not so big and so fast that they're becoming unusable, which for me is an issue now. I like the 991. I've driven the GTS version. I thought, again, was an absolutely brilliant car.
Yeah, it's a beautiful car.
But for me, it's probably the end currently of 911s, because I think the latest version is just too big.
Yeah.
And I think they're reaching a point now, a little bit like modern Ferraris, where they're so fast. I don't know what you can do with them.
Yeah, true.
On the road, you can't really enjoy them on a road without taking a lot of risk.
Well, look at the trouble you get into with the Turbo S. If you had a 992, Turbo S, it's insane.
It's a fantastic car, but they are huge.
Yeah.
Certainly when I've seen them over here, but even in the UK, they're so big.
Yeah, they are.
And they're so fast. I'm just not quite sure what you can do with them. I think you can quite frankly, you can have a lot more fun at slow speeds.
Yes. Yeah, which is what I like about the 912. Look, for me, I think, the 997 and the 912 are a perfect combination.
Yeah, I think
two cars. So that's my aim. Stephen, we're almost at the end, but I always like to ask the question. You kind of touched on it already. There's not a lot of great roads, you said, where you are in Jersey, but what are the favorite roads you like to drive on, to drive a 911? If a listener's listening, and the listeners who are listening who are going to Europe, what road would you say definitely take your 911 on that road?
If you're down south, then take a trip down to Goodwood. So come down from Gatwick Airport, come down the M23, and then head across country. so that you go through a place called Wisborough Green and you drive down to Petworth and then you go from Petworth to Goodwood.
Yeah, I have to admit, I did do that drive with, I think I did that drive on that road with Nick, who was on the very first Owner Stories from the UK, who's got a Carrera 4S. And we went to Goodwood and he came here and met up with me, and we went down to Goodwood and had lunch down there at the Goodwood restaurant there, whatever it's called.
Yep.
I don't know what
The
it's
Kennels.
called. Yeah, the Kennels. It was
Yep.
fantastic. Yeah, it was a fantastic drive and a fantastic day down there.
It's a great road as long as it's clear. I've driven it many times, and I do enjoy that. I haven't done it, but it's absolutely on my bucket list to do the North Coast 500.
Yeah.
It's becoming so popular now that I'm just a little bit concerned about traffic volumes and the like. I think if you've got the time and the inclination, then head down to Cornwall, because it's quieter down there. There are some great driving roads down there. Depends what you want. I mean, if you know, even I think it's the A30, once you're past Exeter, is quite a good road to drive in, for example, a modern 911.
So where's the first place you're going to take the 912? You're going to drive it back from London? Where are you going to
Well, I'm going to drive it. I'm debating which way to go, but I will probably take it, if I can, probably just through the tunnel, and then I'll drive it back through northern France. It's left-hand drive, so it's very easy to drive in France.
Yeah.
And then just take the something like the coast road through northern France, so from Calais all the way around to Saint-Malo, where we get the ferry home. There's some lovely quiet roads there. You can really, it's far, far nicer driving there than it is in the south of England, because the roads are better quality and much less crowded. So if I have my way, I will bring the car home that way. And that's one of the advantages in Jersey. You're only an hour by ferry from France, and there are great driving roads in the whole of northern France.
Fantastic.
I'll probably use the car more over there than I will in the UK.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks for being on Owner Stories today. It's been great talking to you. I mean,
no, thank you.
You've had some great cars, that's for sure. You really have, and you've got a great 912, which I'm very, very excited about. As you know, it's.
I hope so, and just keep looking, Michael. The car that you want, you'll know it when you see it, and go for it.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely, you won't regret it.
Absolutely. All right, thank you so much, Stephen. Great talking to you.
No problem. All right, enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's PorscheCooled Owner Stories. That's Stephen coming in from Jersey. Until next time, bye for now.